Welcome everyone to Porterverse Workbench. This particular episode, and the next few following, will be part of a mini event I like to call March Model Madness. The reason being is that all episodes in the month of March uploaded this year in particular will be focusing on models that are very long overdue for their showcases. Some models that I've been teasing in the background of some of my previous videos or have said have been happening. Some of these models have been completed for either just a few weeks or even a few years now. So now I feel it's a good time to shed some light on them after all this time. This particular video will be focusing on my model of Belle, who's been completing for about 8 months or so as we're recording this, I think. So you can just imagine how overdue her showcase is. Looking at this model, you'll notice that Belle is the most different from her TVS counterpart, period. More unlikely that of anyone else in the Porterverse. And there is a reason why she looks this way, and her base is also different as well, which I'll go into and now. Here we go. In this universe, Belle is not a BR Standard 4. Instead, she is a similar looking LMS Fairburn 4MT, which was first built in 1945. Belle specifically was built in 1950 as BR number 42069. Best number ever. Her working life under British Railways was not that long, less than 20 years in fact. She was withdrawn in 1966 along with loads of her other siblings. During her withdrawal, she met one Charles Hatt, who happened to be visiting the area at the time. Charles was the controller of the northwestern region of British Railways, specifically the islands of Sodor and Man. The region was in need of a new banking engine urgently, as their design built for banking trains up the steep incline was out for an overhaul, and the two engines filling in were still struggling. Charles believed that Belle, in particular, was the perfect fit for the job, and so he managed to persuade British Rail to instead transfer her to Sodor to become a banking engine. British Railways reluctantly agreed, and Belle was cleaned up and sent to Sodor under her own power. It was upon her arrival in Sodor that she met her working partner Antares for the first time. The two would conflict on a few ideas at first, but could become best friends. Following the Northwestern and British Railway split of 1968, the engines of Sodor were repainted to remove any and all British Railways indicators, insignia, etc. Those engines on Sodor just reapplied their grouping era liveries from the Northwestern Railway. Antares was repainted back into his banking indigo livery, and Belle would follow suit in this paint scheme. During her repaint, Belle also received her new Northwestern Railway number, that being 24. Belle still wears the banking indigo livery today, and you can still see her banking trains up Gordonsdale actively to this very day. Belle's model was admittedly pretty simple. She is simply a repaint of Bachmann's Fairburn tank engine. I tried looking for the exact number she wore, but the closest I could find was 42073, and so I figured I could just scratch off the 73 and add the 69 myself, and so I ordered it. After the quick removal of the decals, I applied my brush-on gray acrylic as primer. It technically isn't primer, but it's worked for me before, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess. After drying, I applied the main color. Finding this specific shade was not easy, as I wanted to find an indigo shade that wasn't too purple or too blue. To me, the perfect shade of indigo is a shade that kind of messes with your eyes a little bit. It's kind of hard to tell if it's purple or blue per se. Most options I considered were just too much one way or the other. I eventually came across and settled on Aberbil's Concord Grape. The label appeared to be more purple, and I figured this would be the paint color as well. But I figured I could just add blue to the bottle if I needed to, so I bought it. To my surprise though, it was the perfect shade. It really looked like an indigo shade. And so I decided to apply it as it was, out of the bottle. I brushed on about 3 to 4 very thin coats, and I used a smaller brush each time to make sure it was even all around. This is the method I would recommend to those trying to hand paint their models. Once the main color was dried and applied, I did the lining in red. Sometimes I cheat a bit and use a red paint pen to achieve desired vibrancy, as applying base red acrylic onto a dark color surface can make the vibrancy a little faint. I also use this method on the running board sides. I applied the Great Pen, and then I used the red acrylic over it to achieve the vibrancy. The lining on the side tanks was pretty hard. Sometimes I use a very flat and wide brush with minimal paint and gently dab it on, basically doing like a connect the dots sort of, like making the general outline. Following this was a lot of touch-ups. I was constantly going back and forth between the red and indigo to make sure it was all even and smooth. Around this time, I also took a crack at painting the smoke box doors, but it didn't work. The white paint I used was too gloppy, and I didn't have decals, and these are really tiny numbers, and so I decided to paint over the number board. She was bound to wear her Northwestern number anyway, so no biggie for me, really. It was also around this time I decided to paint the dome and top feed area in gold. I feel this gives the livery more of a distinction from my Northwestern blue, as they're the most similar. It's also nice seeing another livery aside from the Northwestern red having the brass fittings. After that, I painted on the numbers on her tanks, and I completely forgot to take pictures of this process. After that came the signature megaphone inspired by tugs just glued into her cab window, and then a matte clear coat. Belle was finally complete, around the summertime of 2024. I am really happy with this model. I'm just so shocked that I managed to find the exact shade that was perfect for this model. I also feel that this model of Belle is a perfect blend to make her both similar and different to her TV series counterpart. And speaking of this indigo shade, it will be the same livery I paint Antares in once I make his model. But he's going to be a huge undertaking, as that will require designing a custom body shell and printing it myself. Maybe even a custom chassis, but who knows. Just know that I'll make Antares eventually. But for now, a handful of other models are coming your way in the coming weeks, including Goober Edward, Casula, and more. So stay tuned for those showcases in the coming weeks. Thank you all very much for watching this episode of Porterverse Workbench, and I shall see you all same time next week.